Okay, good afternoon, everybody. How are you? I hope everything is okay. This is Dr. Ja, and welcome to the course Introduction to Literature. This is our second lecture. I started the other week with the first chapter, and today I'm going to deal with chapter 2. Welcome to the course Introduction to Literature. So you have to follow as usual. And what we have to do is I will lecture and you can post your questions in the chat. And I will be able to take all your questions. All right, so now without any delay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, this is what we're going to do today. Introduction to Literature, Chapter 2. Poetry as a genre. Today we're going to develop poetry as a literary genre. So, what is poetry? What is a literary genre? It is important for you to understand these things very well because I have specific objectives in this chapter. What are the objectives? All right, number one is to help you master the definitions of poetry and distinguish it from prose. You know, prose and poetry are different. When you take a novel, the novel is written in prose, okay? But poetry is different in terms of aesthetics. It's different in terms of style and in terms of tone and everything. And the second specific objective is to identify the main characteristics of poetry. So the main characteristics of poetry, what do I exactly want you to know? All right, is to be able to identify the characteristics of poetry. All right, sorry, please. To be able to identify the characteristics of poetry and to see what is rhythm, meter, imagery, figurative language, and so on and so forth. So the other characteristic is, or the other aspect of the course, what is it? Is to classify the different forms of poetry. In the different forms of poetry, I expect you to understand the different genre or subgenre: epic, ballad, lyric, ode, elegy, sonnet, etc. And the other thing is, it is important to take notes and to practice with the examples provided. If you go through the course, you will see that I have provided a video, and there is a course material with many, many examples. So it should not be very complicated for you. Now, when we start in terms of content, what I have to explain to you is poetry as a literary genre. Number one thing you might ask me is, what is a genre? Even in French, you were introduced to the different genres, les genres littéraires. Okay, so in French also, we use the same term, genre. So what is it? Genre is important in order to be able to organize writing based on their form, content, and style. For example, it allows reader to discern whether or not the event being written about a piece of literature are factual or imaginative. What does this mean? It is important anytime you read a piece of literature to be able to identify its genre. It means you have to check if it is imaginative or it is factual. What does it mean? It is factual. If it is true, when it is true, because this is based on reality, this is based on history. For example, if you take an essay, this is a scientific argument. If you take a memoir or if you take an autobiography, all right, these things deal with the life of the person. So it is important to be able to know what these kind of genre are. Another thing, genre also distinguishes the purpose of the particular piece of literature and the way in which it is to be delivered. Yes, because when you read the genre, it helps you know, even if when you are writing or when you are commenting, you need to know what kind of piece of literature you have with you in order to know the techniques you are going to use to interpret the text. Or if you're going to write a poem, or if you're going to write a novel, or if you're going to write an essay, it's also important to know what are the characteristics of this, literary work in order for you to apply its conventions, its norms, and its characteristics. In other words, plays are meant to be performed and speeches are meant to be delivered orally, whereas novels and memoirs are meant to be read. Here is one concrete example. When we talk about a play you can call it also theater. Now, with development of technology, you can watch them on the television. And theater also, as a genre, usually it is performed. It is called in French pièce de théâtre. There are many plays that are performed. They are meant to be in front of an audience. You see a drama team or a drama committee in a troupe théâtrale. For example, you go to Daniel Sorano, you can have, a piece of theater, like you can have Le Soleil Levant, like Saner and his troupe, they can perform some. A play by Shakespeare, like Hamlet, is performed because these pieces of literature are meant to be performed in front of an audience. When you compare them to speeches are meant to be delivered directly and orally. If you compare them with a novel, the novel is meant to be read, and the memoir or the autobiography, they are meant to be read. All right, class? So here you have briefly a concrete example of a difference between poetry and the other genre. So poetry, as you can see, is one of the oldest and most profound forms of literary expression, distinguished in its use of rhythm, meter, imagery, and figurative language. Here, what you need to understand is that when you revisit literature, poetry is one of the oldest genres. Yes, the poetry is one of the oldest genres. And one of its characteristics, it is using profound forms of expression. Poetry distinguishes itself, with its characteristics, its use of rhythm, meter, imagery, and figurative language. So different from prose, it means unlike prose. Prose uses a straightforward narrative and expository structure. So it means when you take a novel, the novel exposes directly the problem. It goes directly to the action. It narrates the action. Poetry uses codes. Poetry uses images. Poetry condenses meaning. And it uses a very beautiful style, a beautiful form. So throughout history, poetry has been a vehicle of storytelling. There are many storytellers who have used poetry as a form of expression, as a form of cultural preservation, as a form of philosophical reflection. You have read Charles de Baudelaire, you have read others like Mallarmé, or you have read Victor Hugo, you have read Shakespeare, you may have read many American great poets. All of them have written great things through poetry. So poetry transcends mere artistic expression. It shapes identities, it records history, and it offers profound insights into human condition. So poetry is a genre that helps, live some experiences. It exposes the sentiments, the feelings of the writer. So this section of my course is an exploration of poetry as a literary genre, and it familiarizes you with it. So this part of the course defines the characteristics and the major forms of style and its continuing impact on literature and society. So in this part, I will deal with the characteristics of poetry, I will deal with the major forms of poetry, and I will deal with the styles of poetry. All right? So poetry is definition and characteristics of poetry. All right? So poetry is a major literary genre. Okay? And it can have or it can take many forms. Poetry is a major literary genre. Poetry can have different forms. All right? Some common characteristics of poetry, some features, okay, of poetry shared are that it is written in lines. Okay? How to identify poetry? Poetry is different from, the novel, from fiction in general. Poetry is written in lines that have meter and rhythm. It is, in terms of style and structure, organized in lines. And these lines are put together to form a stanza. A stanza in French means strophe. When you read a poem, you have to use a technical word. Don't use the term paragraph. We say strophe. Strophe 1, strophe 2. Okay, don't talk about paragraph in a poem. So, in contrast to other writings that utilize sentences that are divided into paragraphs. So the difference is when you read a novel, you read Ambiguous Adventure by Sheikh Hamidou Khan, or you read So Long a Letter by Mariam Abba. What is the difference? Is that these works are organized in paragraphs and sentences. When you take a piece of poetry, take for example Les Fleurs du Mal, The Evil of Flowers by Charles Baudelaire, you are going to see that the poem is written from a different style. It uses strophes, don't call it paragraph, but call it strophes, and it uses lines. So poetry often lies heavily on figurative language, such as metaphors and similes, in order to convey meanings and create images for the reader. So when you read poetry, strong and sophisticated language. Poetry uses figurative language. Okay? What you call in French, les figures de style. Poetry uses metaphors, images, okay? And it gives a lot of impression to the reader. Some readers like pieces of poetry because of the beauty of the language, because the text is full of imagery. The text is full of music. The text is full of melody. The text is full of rhythm. Sometimes there is rhyme. There are so many beautiful things. So poetry is a form of literature that insists on aesthetics and rhythmic qualities of language, such as meter, sound, imagery, to evoke emotions, convey ideas, and express experiences. What does it mean here? So poetry is a form of literature which insists on aesthetics. So aesthetics or rhythmic qualities. It means the beautiful, aspects of the text, the beautiful aspect of the language. So the text has a content, and the text is produced in a specific language. The language of the poet is beautiful. It is written in verse. It is written with meter, with sound, with imagery. And what is this? What is the objective of this? Because the poet wants to show emotions, feelings. The poet also wants to share ideas, and the poet wants to express experiences. Not always the poet wants to talk about themselves. They can talk about another event, another person. So unlike prose, poetry employs, so it means different from prose. This is what poetry employs. Poetry uses meter and rhythm. What is meter and rhythm? Meter and rhythm, it is a structured arrangement of stressed and unstressed syllables. Okay, example, Iambic pentameter in Shakespeare's sonnet. What does it mean? It is the way it is arranged, the organization of the meter, the organization of the verse. If you take the verse is organized in a certain arrangement. You have an unstressed syllable. What does it mean? It means a syllable that is not accentuated. Okay? First, you have a stressed one. It means a syllable that is accentuated, followed by a stress, a, a syllable that is not accentuated. And this is called, or this is an example of the iambic pentameter in Shakespeare's sonnets. The poetry is also using rhyme and sound devices. What is rhyme? Rhyme is a beautiful music that ends in a poem. You can have words that have the same ending. Okay, you can have drum, you can have mum, you can have gum, you can have some. So you see, this is rhyme. Drum, mum, gum, some. You can have sound devices. What are the sound devices? The sound devices are these sounds. These are figures, what you call in French figure distinct. Figures of style that are related to the sound. It means you have a sound and the device, c'est des figures distinctes qui sont basées sur le son. That's why you have rhyme skills, you have alliteration, you have assonance, consonants to create musical effects. In another course, I will teach you what is alliteration, what is assonance. Alliteration, okay, is when you have, the repetition of vowels, okay? And assonance when you have the repetition of consonants, okay? Okay, right? To create musical effect. In poetry, you have meter and rhythm, okay? In poetry, you have meter and rhythm, okay? Meter and rhythm are fundamental elements that contribute to the musical quality of a poem. So the meter and the rhythm, they help you, decode and says the beautiful, structure of the poem. It is through the meter and the rhythm that you see the beauty of the poem, the beauty of the language. It sounds like music. You see the rhyme, you hear the sounds, repetition of sounds, repetition of vowels, repetition of consonants. And consonants, sorry. Is it okay, class? It is too fast? Okay, I'm going to go slowly. All right. All right, so I talk about meter and rhythm, and I said that in a meter and a rhythm, what it is the structure, arrangement of stressed and unstressed syllables. What does it mean? It means a good organization of syllables. Here the syllables are accentuated, others are not accentuated. When you have an accentuated syllable followed by a not accentuated syllable, this can be the example of an iambic pentameter. You have rhyme and sound devices. Rhyme is when a verse ends or verses ends in the same sound. For example, when I say drum, mum, gum, some. You see, you have the same sound. Drum, mum, gum, some. You see the same sound. This is a rhyme. So in sound devices also, it means you hear repetition of sounds. Listen here, drum, mum, gum, some. You hear a lot of. This is a repetition of a vowel, okay? And you hear also the repetition of a consonant. That's why people talk about alliterations, assonance, and consonants, something like that. So in poetry, all right, meter, okay? In poetry, all right, meter and rhythm are fundamental elements that contribute to the musical quality of a poem. Class, this is a YouTube lecture, it's not a Zoom lecture. All right, so what is rhythm? Rhythm refers to the model of stressed and unstressed syllable in a line of poetry. I repeat, rhythm is the model. Pattern means model. Rhythm is the model of stress. It means accentuated and not accentuated syllables in a line of poetry. It gives poetry its beats, and it can vary depending on the natural flow of words and the poet's stylistic choices. What does it mean? The rhythm of a poem depends on the writer, on the poet, what he wants to do or what he wants people to understand. He can use alliterations, he can use repetition of vowels, he can use repetition of consonants, he can use repetition of expressions, names, or something like that. So what is meter? The meter is a structured and systematic arrangement of rhythm. So the meter finds the arrangement of, rhythm. The meter consists of sequence of stanzas. In a meter, you have, as I told you, a stressed syllable and a stressed syllable that create repetitive pattern within a poem. So in the meter, you can find a foot. I will tell you what is a foot. So in a foot, you have this. Each meter is defined by a type of foot. What is a foot? A foot is what you call in French pied, a unit of rhythm, and the number of feet per line. So when you take a meter, it means a verse. How you identify it? So every foot has a one stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable, or it could be more. It continues. So here, we can have types of poetic feet. We call it basic metrical units. Here we have the types of poetic feet. And the types of poetic feet, sometimes we call it basic metrical units. All right? I'm following the chart. Please, you can post in the chat if you have questions. What is a poetic foot? What is a poetic foot? I told you foot means in French pied. A poetic foot is a combination of stressed and unstressed syllables. Okay? A poetic foot is a combination of an accentuated syllable followed by unaccentuated syllables. Okay? And here, the experience is that the most common feet in English poetry include the following. Here are examples, of feet. You can have what people call iambic, an iambic foot. When you have an iambic foot or an iambic meter, what does it mean? All right? You have this. In an iambic, you have this symbol. This means that, all right, it is not stressed. And the other one means it is stressed. So an iambic, it means a stressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Example, you have believe, you have return. I repeat, an iambic foot means one that is unstressed, a syllable where, or a foot where one syllable is unstressed and the other one is stressed. Let us take this word. You have believe. Here you don't insist on the be. We say be. And you have leave. Example, believe. Believe. And the next one is return. That's why in English it's very important to respect the pronunciation of words in English. But when you want to mark the iambic, foot, you need to pronounce correctly and to show, the accentuation, to show what is the unstressed syllable followed by the stressed syllable. And you have here an example, you have believe, and we say return. I repeat, believe, return. So this is iambic. Now, what is a trochee or a trochaic, foot? Here, it's different from the first one. The first one, in iambic, you have unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. It means a syllable that is not stressed followed by a syllable that is stressed. Here, this is in iambic. In a trochee or trochaic, you have the contrary. You have a stressed syllable, one that is accentuated, followed by another one that is not accentuated. For example, you have it, a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. Example, you have table, you have tiger. Look how we pronounce the words. Table, we say tiger. You see, this is different from believe and return. This is important, class. When you do poetry, take time to pronounce in order to find the correct stressed and not stressed syllable. Is it fine so far? I hope now it is okay, not very quick, class. So there is what we call also anapestic or the anapest. Here you have three things. You have two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. Here it is important to see, class, what it is. Here in an anapestic foot, you have two unstressed syllable followed by one stressed syllable. Example, you have this in the night to the sea. You see, we say in the night to the sea. You see, when I pronounce, you find that the level of accentuation is not the same. I say in the night. I insist on night and I say to the sea. Night, sea. In the night, to the sea. This is an anapestic thing because here we have two unstressed syllables. It means the first two, you don't insist on them. You don't insist on in, you don't insist on the, but you still insist on night. You say in the night. And the next one, you don't insist on to, you do not insist on the, you insist on sea. I repeat, in the night to the sea. And the other one is a dactyl or a dactylic foot. What does it mean? Here you have the reverse of anapestic. Here you have one stressed syllable followed by two stressed syllables. Example, we say beautiful. We say murmuring. Beautiful, murmuring. You see here, you see how the word is formed? You find three syllables in the word. That's why in English, I repeat again, pronunciation is very important. Pronunciation in English is very important. We say beautiful, murmuring. So when you respect the pronunciation of this, you see here the composition of the dactyl. All right? Is it okay, class? Is it fine so far? Can you post in the chat if it is quick or if you understand, I move. And the last one is a spondy or spondic. Here, what does it mean? Here you have two stressed syllables. It means two accentuated syllables. All right? What is it? You have an example, we say heartbreak. So heartbreak, the two syllables have the same level of pronunciation. Yes, that's the same level of pronunciation. We say heartbreak. We say sunshine. We say sunrise. You see? Here you have what we call a spondy or a spondic. The two syllables are stressed. All of them are stressed. We say heartbreak. We say sunshine. All right. So I come back to the meter. The meter of a poem is determined by how many feet occur in the line. So here, what does it mean? It means that a meter is composed of feet. Feet is a plural of foot, pieds. Dans un mètre, il y a plusieurs pieds. Un mètre peut avoir un seul pied, deux pieds, trois pieds, quatre pieds, cinq pieds, six pieds. So it is important for you to know what that is in English. You have done this in première, I don't know, in terminal, versification. So you have the meter, le mètre. The meter of a poem is determined by how many feet occur in the line. So a meter, you can have 1 feet. If you have 1 feet, we call it a monometer. What is a monometer? A monometer is a verse, you can call it, composed of 1 foot. Or you say a monometer has 1 foot per line. If I say, class, what is the name of a meter composed of 1 foot? You tell me that is a monometer. Or I tell you, what is a monometer? You tell me a monometer is a verse composed of 1 foot. Or you tell me in your own words, a monometer is a verse that has only 1 foot per line. Is that clear? And there is what we call a demeter. A demeter, we have 2 feet per line. Or you say a demeter is a verse composed of 2 feet. A demeter is a verse composed of 2 feet. We have what we call a trimeter. In a trimeter, we have 3 feet per line. You can say a trimeter consists of 3 feet per line. Or you say a trimeter is a verse composed of 3 feet per line. We have what we call a tetrameter. What is a tetrameter? A tetrameter is a verse composed of 4 feet per line. All right? And there is what we call a pentameter. What is a pentameter in English? All right? A pentameter is a verse composed of 5 feet per line. When you have a poem, and the poem is composed of verses, and in each line you find only 1 feet, so that is a monometer. If you find a meter, a line, a meter is composed of 2 feet per line. It means in the line you have only 2 feet, that is a demeter. So when you want to talk about the structure of a poem, it's also good when you look at the poem to say the poem is beautifully structured. It is composed of monometer or demeter or trimeter or tetrameter or pentameter or hexameter. And in order for you to know this, you have to understand the characteristics of poetry. So you have to go through your course and check, look when you read and you take time to identify the stressed and the unstressed syllable, you would not have a problem. So when I come back on iambic pentameter, this is very common. One of the most commonly used meters in English poetry is iambic pentameter. So iambic pentameter has become like a tradition. In English, so Musa Huma, you said, what is the difference between 2 words, a stressed syllable and a stressed syllable? Okay, so Huma, what is a stressed syllable? A stressed syllable means une syllabe accentuée. In French, it means une syllabe sur laquelle on tire. Par exemple, I said believe, believe. Là, on ne tire pas sur le B, mais on tire sur le livre. Believe, return. C'est ça. C'est ça qu'on appelle un stressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. La première syllabe n'est pas accentuée, la deuxième syllabe est accentuée. Ou bien c'est le contraire. La première syllabe est accentuée, la deuxième n'est pas accentuée. So what does it mean? You have your example, you have believe, you have return. The other one, where the first syllable is stressed in a trochaic, we have table, you have tiger. The other one, you have in the night, you have to the sea. The dactyl, you have stressed syllable followed by 2 that are not stressed. You have beautiful and you have murmuring. All right? So these are examples that help you. I think I have answered your question. So one of the most commonly used meters in English in poetry is the iambic pentameter. So the iambic pentameter consists, or the iambic pentameter is composed of 5 iambs per line. What does it mean? It means each line has 10 syllables alternating between unstressed and stressed syllable. What does it mean? It means that here, in an iambic pentameter, what do you have? You have 10 syllables in a line, 10 syllables. So, and the 10 syllables, they are very well organized. They are alternating between unstressed syllable. It means a syllable that is not stressed, followed by a syllable that is stressed. I'm going to give you examples of iambic pentameter. Here is an example from Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. Look, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Look here, when you try to see how it is composed, you have a stressed syllable, shall I compare thee to a summer's day. You will have in the composition, an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Here, each syllable follows, unstressed syllable pattern. It means model, okay, forming 5 iambic pentameter. Because here, iambic pentameter, what is a pentameter? A pentameter, as I told you, is a verse composed of 5 feet. In the 5 feet, each feet, has 2 syllables. That's why you have 10 syllables. One is stressed, followed by a stressed syllable. There is another example from Shakespeare. You always should know who is Shakespeare. Okay? Shakespeare is one of, an English writer who is referred to as the one who is the best. Okay? Iamb in French, it's the same. We call it iamb. All right? So from Macbeth, look at this example. So full and fair a day I have not seen. So full and fair a day I have not seen. If you check here, this line follows the iambic pentameter pattern. Here also you have the iambic pentameter. Look at so full and fair a day I have not seen. This line follows the iambic pentameter pattern. It means here, when you go syllable by syllable, okay, when you go syllable by syllable, you find a stressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Mariama Bari is talking about problem with, feet. Okay? What is a foot? A foot is a combination of vowels. No, a combination of syllables. Okay? When you have 2 syllables, you have always to put them in 2 or in 3. All right? Une syllabe accentuée, vous les mettez en paire. Une syllabe accentuée, ou bien suivie par une syllabe non accentuée, ou bien vous dites une syllabe non accentuée, suivie par une syllabe accentuée. The two, when you combine them, you have a foot. You call them an iambic foot. When it is not stressed, followed by a stressed one, you call it the iambic foot. All right? Here we have examples of pentameter. Pentameter, I told you, in the pentameter, it means a line composed of 5 feet. All right? Look at here. It's very concrete. If you see the example you see from Shakespeare, Sonnet 18, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And you have in the practice all the syllables that are unstressed and all the syllables that are not stressed. And the last example is from Shakespeare again. And this is from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is a question. That's why when you read in English, and you don't respect the pronunciation, it's not good. It's not good. People get lost. Even in poetry, it is important to respect really the accent. So important questions. Why is iambic pentameter important? Iambic pentameter closely mimics natural English speech, making it a favorite among poets and playwrights. Because when people respect iambic pentameter, it imitates, it mimics the natural, the nature of the English language. Because the English language sounds like music. That's why in English, pronunciation is important. In English, you have to respect the accent. When you respect the accent, you show the beauty of the language. All right? So it provides a rhythmic and musical quality to poetry. That's why poets use the iambic pentameter. When they use the iambic pentameter, it is a nice organization of the language. So iambic, you have unstressed, accent, syllable non-accentué, followed by a stressed one. You continue. So it is very rhythmic. It is very rhythmic. So it allows flexibility for expression. It makes it suitable for both formal and dramatic contexts. It uses imagery in symbolism, vivid description and metaphorical language to paint mental pictures. It uses conciseness and compression. What does it mean? The ability to condense meaning into few words. It uses figurative language. Okay, c'est les figures du style, such as metaphors, similes, and allegories. I give you one example. When Donald Trump visited the United Kingdom, the of the UK, the Prime Minister of the UK, pronounced his speech. It was really fantastic. And when he finished, Donald Trump said, "Oh, what a beautiful language. What a beautiful accent." He said, "What is a beautiful accent?" So it means when you pronounce English correctly, it becomes very beautiful. You see the rhythm, you see the features of poetry. It becomes like a poetic language. All right? So continue asking your questions. So major forms and styles of poetry. When I deal with the major forms and style of poetry, what should you know here? Poetry is organized into various forms, each with distinct structural and thematic features. So here, the different forms. These are subgenre. Poetry is a genre, and inside the genre, you have subgenre. It's just like a house. A house is a building, and the buildings, there are rooms. And in the rooms inside, you find small things or small rooms. It could be a bathroom. A bathroom is a small room in the room. You see? So poetry is a genre, and these are subgenre categories. All right? So we talk about major forms and styles of poetry. Poetry is characterized into various forms, each with distinct structural and thematic features. Let us start with narrative poetry. Narrative, it narrates. First, we have epic poetry. What is epic poetry? An epic is first a long and narrative poem that tells the story of a heroic figure or a significant historical and mythical event. What does it tell here? That an epic or epic poetry is first a long narrative poem. It is a poem that is long and a poem that narrates. What does that poem tell you about? The poem tells you about a heroic figure. It means a famous figure, a great, a giant, a big guy. And it tells you about a significant historical or mythical event. It tells you about something very important in history or in mythology. So epics are usually grand, big in scope, and they involve or they concern supernatural elements. You find supernatural elements, magical elements. You find battles, wars, and a journey that defines a culture's values. So the epic is All right? The earliest literary form, one of the earliest literary form. It means it is one of the oldest literary form. Because remember, I told you, poetry is among the oldest literary genre. So epic consists of a long narrative in elevated style. It means a high style. It deals with great and serious subject, important subject. So epics usually operate on a large scale, both in length and topic. So it means the epic is a long poem. It narrates, and sometimes it's talk about the founding of a nation or the beginning of a world history. So it is a poem. It does like a narration, a poem that narrates, but the poem narrates deeply about the great things that a culture has, or the great thing that a civilization or a nation has, or the great thing that a person or a giant or a hero has done. So it uses an elevated style. It means sophisticated language and supernatural things, magical things. So the works of Homer, you know Homer, it is Homer and Virgil. They are all Greek writers. They provided the prototype of classical literature. You can also compare them with the English writer John Milton in his Paradise Lost. It is a good example in English literature. So epics have the following features. How do you recognize an epic poem? In the epic poem, you find this. The hero is a figure of great importance. When you find a long poem narrating, and you find that the hero is a figure of great importance, interesting one, and you find that the setting, la scène, of the poem is ample, it's big, and you find that the action involves, in the action you have, superhuman, things that are magical. You find a battle, a war, or a long journey, a difficult one. And you find in the text gods or supernatural things, or how can I say, other miracle things, okay? And there are catalogs of some of the principal characters introduced in formal detail. And then you see that the narrator begins by stating his theme and invoking a muse. This is an epic. If I simplify it, class, okay? These are the characteristics of an epic. In an epic, you find a heroic protagonist. What does it mean? It means the central character is a noble hero, strength, intelligence, or bravery. It means in an epic poem, there is a hero, a protagonist. He is a big guy, a big person, an extraordinary strength, intelligent, and brave. You have a vast setting in large scene, in grand scene. The story often spans nations, worlds. It cannot only be limited to one village. It can say he traveled from Kayor to Bundu to Bawal to Seju to the Casamance to say what the hero is. Supernatural. The guy was invisible. He had big ears. He had this. He could move in the sky. He can come back. He can catch the fire. He can create the water. This is supernatural. An ordinary human being cannot do that. You have formal and elevated language. The language is very sophisticated. The language is very beautiful. You have themes of faith, faith c'est le sort. You have themes of honor. You have themes of war. When people talk about warriors, c'est la vie des guerriers. It talks about destiny. It talks about heroism. They struggle between good and evil, le mal et le bien. So here are some famous examples of epic poetry. When you read Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, si vous lisez l'Iliade et l'Odyssée de Homère, you will find good examples of that. So another one, we have the ballad. What is a ballad? Sorry. A ballad is a narrative poem or a song that tells a dramatic story. Here we have a ballad. What is a ballad? A ballad is a poem. It is a narrative poem or a song. It could be a poem or a song. Because a poem and a song Sometimes people, singers, they take poems and they sing them. And sometimes people take poems and they dramatize them. That's what you used to do in primary school. Demain de l'aube à l'heure où blanchit la campagne. Tomorrow at dawn by Victor Hugo. Or you recite La mort de David Diop. These are, ballads. La mort de David Diop or Demain de l'aube. These are ballads. You can talk about it. So a ballad is a narrative poem or a song that tells a dramatic story about love, tragedy, adventure, or folklore. So if you have love, tragedy, adventure, or folklore. So ballads are traditionally sung or passed down orally. Usually they are sung or people can pass them down orally. So how do you recognize a ballad? In a ballad, you have these characteristics, okay? Simple language, often written in everyday speech for easy memorization. Yes, that's why you have simple language for easy memorization. That's why in elementary, you all can recite the Medellum. That's why in Semede, you hear people recite La mort de David Diop. Yes, it's because the language is not complicated. They understand the text. You have repetitive structure, contains reference and repeated lines. You have quatrain stanzas. A stanza, I told you, is paragraph, all right? Typically written in 4-line stanza. It is a ballad meter, alternating iambic tetrameter or iambic trimeter. It is in 4 lines or in 3 lines, okay? So dramatic storytelling, it focuses on a single incident, often involving love, betrayal, or death. Some people, some who are lovers, maybe you in your life story, you have fallen in love with one person or one of your classmates or in your life, and then there is betrayal or the person has died and you are still marked by that. So you find dialogue and action in the poem. It looks like the poet is talking to you or talking to somebody else. It often includes direct speech and vivid action. In the course, I have given you an example of ballad, which you have to read from American writer Alan Edgar Poe. Look at Alan Edgar Poe, Annabel Lee. What is Annabel Lee? Annabel Lee is a ballad. If you try to read Annabel Lee, what is it? Annabel Lee. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. In this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love or to be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. Look at this poem. It's very beautiful. This is by Alan Edgar Poe. And the poem is about Annabel Lee. If you take the comments of the poem, what does it say? Annabel Lee is one of Alan Edgar Poe's most famous poems. It was published when Alan Edgar Poe died. And the poem is melancholic. It tells you about melancholy. It's very lyrical. It tells you about the feelings, the sentiment of the poet. It's just like when you take Victor Hugo poem. Okay, it tells about love for Annabel Lee. It tells about, sadness. And it is idealized. You have the eternal love. You have also the tragedy. It shows a tragic situation. The poem insists on the youth of lovers. It says, I was a child and she was a child. It means they are both young and very innocent. They did not know what it is, but they were moved by love. There are supernatural forces and fate. What is it? In the supernatural forces, the poem says that, all right, angels envied them, leading to Annabel Lee's death. It means that even angels were jealous. And maybe it's because Annabel Lee was very beautiful, very nice. Even angels loved Annabel Lee. And maybe that was a tragedy that caused Annabelle to die. You see how beautiful this ballad is. And when we talk about mourning and obsession, mourning, c'est le deuil. Mourning. So the narrator's grief, okay, is obsessive. So the narrator, the poet refuses to accept that Annabelle has died. So Annabelle lived even after her death. The final stanza in which lies down by her side. So the story has gone, Annabelle has died, but he could not agree that Annabelle has died. It's just like she is still alive. It means this love story is very strong. When you talk about symbolism and imagery, it talks about kingdom by the sea. Imagine how can you build kingdom by the sea, all right? This is very important. So in conclusion, you will see that Annabelle is a poignant and haunting ballad that encapsulates Alan Edgar Poe's mastery of Gothic romanticism. There is a lot of romanticism. There is a lot of romanticism in the poem. It is romantic, it is tragic. You find all of them. You find melancholy, you find other things. Is it okay, class? Is that fine? Okay, I need to speed. And now we move to lyric poetry. Lyric poetry. All right, class, is it okay so far? Is it fast? I can go slowly, sorry. I can go slowly. I want to detail it more for you. Lyric poetry. What is lyric poetry? Lyric poetry, it expresses personal emotions and thoughts. Here, lyric, like in French, it shows personal feelings and thoughts. So a lyric poem is comparatively short and non-narrative. What is the characteristic of a lyric poem? It is naturally short and it is not narrative. It means it is non-narrative. I repeat, lyric poem or lyric poetry, it is usually short and not narrative. And there you find a single speaker who presents a state of mind or an emotional state. A single speaker. So lyric poetry retains some of the elements of a song in which is said to be its origin. So in the lyric, it looks like a song because it is most of them. You see, musicians, artists, they compose many lyric poems. Yes, music is made out of song, and the song comes from poetry. It is poetry that is, performed and sung now. So in a lyric poem, it's very short, and lyric poetry retains some of the elements of the song, which is said to be its origin. So for Greek writers, the lyric was a song accompanied by an instrument, and the instrument is a lyre. So the lyre is a lyrical, instrument that is used, and the artist use it or the musician use it. So the poet can take this instrument, which is a lyre, and it try to compose a poem. The poem is not narrative and the poem is not long, and it becomes lyrical. So I can give you example of lyrical poems. You can take the example of a sonnet. What is a sonnet? A sonnet is a 14-line poem with a structured rhyme scheme. What is a 14-line? It means simply, if I simplify it, a poem composed of 14 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, until 14. This is a sonnet. When you see a poem and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 11, 13, 14. 14 lines. This is a sonnet. We call this a sonnet in English. It's very simple, class. What is a sonnet? A sonnet is a poem, okay, that is composed of 14 lines. And this kind of poem is in the category of lyric poetry. It is in the category of lyric poetry. Okay, Abdul-Jir, I'm going to speak, yes, slowly, yes. All right, and then you have, as another lyric poetry, also you have an ode. What is an ode? An ode is a formal, elevated poem praising a subject. It's formal. Okay? It's formal. In French, très solennel. Très solennel, formal. Elevated, haut niveau. Praising. Okay? Faire des louanges. And you have elegy. What is an elegy? An elegy is a poem of mourning. Mourning means day. It is a poem where you are crying that somebody has died. Example, you may have read Senghor's elegy for Philip Senghor. Do you know the son of Senghor, Philip Senghor? When Philip Senghor, the son of Senghor, died, it was very hard for Senghor. And then Senghor wrote a poem that was called Elegy pour Philip Senghor. So you see in the poem, you see Senghor crying. You read Senghor crying. You see the emotions of Senghor. Senghor feeling the death of his son, Philip Senghor. Okay? So he is lamenting the death of someone. So if you read the poem, you feel like Senghor is here. It's just like you are looking at Senghor crying. That's really what is an elegy. So when we talk about sonnet, so the term sonnet from the Italian word sonetto means little song or sound. So sonnet comes from the Italian word sonetto. And sonetto means a little song, a small song, or a small sound. C'est une petite chanson. Okay? But in meaning, there are a lot of things. All right? So it originated in Italy and became popular in England in the Renaissance. So sonnet originated from Italy and it became popular in England in the Renaissance time. So in details, sonnet is a 14-line poem. If I simplify it, sonnet is a poem composed of 14 lines. And most of the time also, the sonnet is written in an iambic pentameter. Remember what is a pentameter and remember what is iambic. Iambic, unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. It means a stress that is not accentuated followed by a stress that is accentuated, like believe, return, and you continue. So what is an ode? Class, it is important. And soon I will finish maybe in 10 minutes or. What is an ode? An ode is a long poem. Okay? You see here, they say that the ode is a long lyric poem. Yes. What is the characteristic? It is lyric. The poem is lyric. And the other characteristic, the poem is long. An ode, I repeat, is a long lyric poem. What are the other elements of an ode? An ode with a serious subject written in an elevated style. Odes address a specific person. In an ode, it talks about a specific person, a thing or an event. The ode is believed to have been invented by the ancient Greek, who would sing their odes. The first odes were written by the Greek poet Pindar in the 5th century before Christ. So what is it? The ode is a long poem and it is very lyric. And people are singing their odes. This is the culture of ancient Greek. In ancient Greek, poets like Pindar, in the 5th century before Christ, They use this. So when you have these kind of poems, it should be easy for you to know what it is. It is formal, elevated poem, and it praises a subject. So an ode is lyrical, and the ode celebrates or praises. The poem is lyrical and long, and the poem praises, ça fait les louanges, ça chante une personne, or object, or an idea. It often has an elevated formal tone. So the tone is very high, and the tone is elevated. Example, you have Ode to a Nightingale. What is a nightingale in French? C'est le rossignol. C'est le rossignol, a nightingale. Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. John Keats is an English poet of the 19th century. In this famous ode, Keats praises the nightingale song and reflects on the nature of beauty, mortality, and the power of poetry. So this is just one example. You take Ode to a Nightingale. A nightingale means in French, le rossignol. And this is what John Keats said. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. This is just a short example of an ode to a nightingale. This is by, but we will continue seeing more examples. Now I deal with the elegy. What is the elegy? The elegy is a poem of mourning. Day, morning means day. Is it good so far, class? Yes, Omar, some of you are giving good examples. Yes. Some of you are giving good examples. I'm glad that you understand the cause. All right. So now I move to elegy. And number one thing is, what is an elegy? An elegy is a poem of mourning. An elegy is a poem that laments. It shows lamentation. It expresses sorrow. C'est le chagrin, sorrow, chagrin, tristesse, for someone who has died. When someone has died, a person that is so dear to you, so you are shocked. You want to express your lamentation. You want to express your sorrow, or chagrin. You write an elegy. So unlike a sonnet, it means different from a sonnet or an ode. An elegy is defined by its theme rather than a fixed structure. So in an elegy, how do you recognize it? It is a topic, the theme, but not the structure. It often follows a progression. In an elegy, you see the progression, the degree of the sorrow, la mélancolie, le chagrin. C'est d'un ton graduel. C'est ascendant, ça monte, la douleur, ça monte. Lamentation. You find one element, lamentation, expressing grief over the loss, expressing sorrow, on exprime son chagrin sur la perte. Praise, honoring the deceased. The person has died, and you are paying tribute to the person. 3, you can find also consolation, finding meaning or comfort despite the loss. It means that even if the person has died, you are trying to find a solution. You are trying to find a consolation. And an example of elegy is "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman. "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman is a very famous elegy. It was written to mourn Abraham Lincoln's death. You know, Abraham Lincoln is the 16th president of the United States, and Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And then Walt Whitman, the great American poet, wrote an elegy for Abraham Lincoln. So in this poem, Walt Whitman uses the metaphor of a ship's captain. You know what is a ship? Le capitaine d'un bateau. That's why he called it captain. So who has successfully led his crew through a storm, the Civil War, but dies before it can be victory. And here is a poem. Oh, captain, my captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rock, the prize we sought is won. But oh, heart, 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 oh, the bleeding drops of red where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. This is an elegy that Walt Whitman has written. And this is for Abraham Lincoln. What does it mean? It is interesting because the poem tells about the national grief, un deuil national, for Abraham Lincoln, who was a giant in America. Because Abraham Lincoln was a hero in America during the Civil War, America was navigating difficult situations. America was divided. The country, the North was against slavery, and the South was for slavery. And they were in a civil war. Many people died. Many people were tortured. Abraham Lincoln did his best to unite the country. He succeeded to unite the country, but he was assassinated. So this is a metaphor. In the language, Walt Whitman wants to show that United States was like a boat navigating difficult situation in the ocean. But the boat was not without captain, it was a captain. So the captain was Abraham Lincoln. So this means that America was in a dark night of situation, a night that was full of problems, navigating situations. But they had a good captain, and that captain was Abraham Lincoln. But unfortunately, victory came, but Abraham Lincoln did not celebrate victory because he was assassinated. He died. And poet Walt Whitman regrets the death of Abraham Lincoln. In his poem, he is crying and finding consolation, saying that even if the captain died, the people survived, the nation survived. That's the consolation. America was navigating a difficult situation. There was a civil war breaking America, but America was lucky to get a good captain. The captain saved the people, but the captain died. The nation survived. That's the consolation, class. I hope it is clear for you, class. Now you have an idea of what is an elegy, and an example of an elegy. If you want to interpret "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Walt Whitman, this is the interest of the poem. It's a very nice and interesting poem. Are you with me, class? Can you post in the chat? Not chat, but the comments. Now, last I talk about dramatic poetry. What is dramatic poetry? Dramatic poetry is poetry written for performance. What does it mean? It means poetry that is read and meant to be performed. It's just like recitation. It's just recitation what you had. A poem is written, but it's not only written like that, but it is to be performed. But it sometimes in dramatic situations. So dramatic, it is a poem or poetry is written for performance. Often part of a play. Most of the time it is in a play, c'est dans les pièces de théâtre. And most of the time it is a soliloquy, a monologue or a dialogue. When you see an actor in a play trying to do a poem, sometimes in the in theater, you see it, Saner or others, they play and they are alone, ils sont seuls sur la scène. And they start moaning.
ca yàlla. Talking to themselves. In French or in Wolof or in Pulaar. They are talking to themselves using poetry. This is poetry for performance. And if you read many poems, many plays, you find a monologue. Or sometimes in Shakespeare's plays, you find it there. So what are the characteristics of dramatic poetry? In dramatic poetry, you find free verse, un vers libre. It means there is no rhyme. Il n'y a pas de rime. Poetry without regular meter or rhyme. You don't find a meter, you don't find a rhyme. It's like prose. C'est comme de la prose. Il n'y a pas de rime, il n'y a pas de metre. Example, Walt Whitman. If you take the poems of Walt Whitman has written excellent poems. It is concrete poetry. Why we call it concrete poetry? It uses visual arrangement to enhance meaning. Spoken word poetry. It means it is performed, based, emphasizes rhythm in voice. So when it is performed, that's where you see the beauty. C'est là la différence. It depends on the one who reads the poem. You are given a poem, you are a very shy boy, and they say, go and read, the Medelope, and you read it in a very shy way. We give another student who comes with, de Medelope à l'heure où blanchit la campagne, je partirai. Vois-tu, je sais que tu m'attends. J'irai par la forêt, j'irai par la montagne. And we start speaking. You are showing the action of the poet. You are acting, doing this. But if you do it like reading a novel, reading a paragraph, no. This means, class, the way we read poetry is different from the way we read a novel or the way we read reading comprehension. No, it's not the same. When you read poetry, mind the beauty. I conclude with that. Mind the beauty. When you read poetry, class, mind that you are reading beautiful language. You are reading a beautiful text. And you have to respect the beauty of the text to show how beautiful it is. When people listen to you, they hear the sound. They hear the rhythm. They hear the melody. They hear the music. Yes, that's the characteristic of poetry. Is it okay? So this type of poetry often features soliloquies. In a soliloquy, what does it mean? A character speaks their inner thought aloud, usually alone, on a stage. You have Shakespeare, soliloquy. When you do a soliloquy, you talk to yourself. And there is a monologue. In Shakespeare's plays, there is one in Hamlet called To Be or Not to Be. That is a question. All right? So this is the end of the lecture. Thank you. I hope it was useful for you. So we have now finished chapter 1 and chapter 2. So get ready for your devoir, your evaluations, control continue, your tests. I will evaluate you on the basis of chapter 1 and 2. Go and read chapter 1 and 2 again and again. Do the test, sorry. Allez faire les tests de connaissance, c'est important. Ce n'est pas comptabilisé, mais ça vous permet de tester. Si c'était un examen, qu'est-ce que vous allez avoir? Go and do it. I hope it was interesting for you. So thank you for today again. It was my pleasure. Before the exam, we will have one last lecture for the last chapter. I wish you good luck for your test and get ready. So have a nice time. Thank you for coming. You can continue doing exercises with your tutor. Thank you for today. Thank you very much. I am done for today.